Hey, 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 all, and welcome to the Skeptic Hangout, the place where we sit back, relax, and chit chat about intriguing and sometimes controversial topics through the lens of skepticism. As you will see or hear in just a moment, Richard Gill and I are not here this episode. Still present with us is our lovely Richard Gilliver, who is joined in this episode by ACA volunteers Hein and Ascalon. Today, they will be discussing anthropology. No, wait. Anthropomorphism. Ah, no. Anthropocene. Damn it. They will be discussing anthroposophy. There it is. Anthroposophy. Man. So grab your English tea or your double espresso and join Richard and his guests as they discuss a philosophy I had never heard of until I went to edit this video. This is episode 25. Anthroposophy, or anthroposophy, or anthroposophy, something like that.
Okay, so welcome to Skeptic Hangout. As you can see, Laura and Richard have changed somewhat this episode. I'm joined by some very special guests this episode. I've got Hein and Ascalon with us. So if you want to give yourselves a brief introduction, starting with Ascalon, let people know who you are.
Oh, hey guys, my name is Ascalon. I'm a moderator on several platforms for the ACA and obviously a new subscriber of Richard's channel.
And Hein?
Yeah, I've known Ascalon for a while now, also from ACA stuff and Discord there. I'm Dutch. I'm an atheist, as in I've never believed. I was raised without religion, and I'm gradually getting into the atheist community.
Brilliant. This week, we're going to be doing a special episode, as you can see, without our regular hosts, because Richard is still sunning himself on holiday. Laura has had a last-minute work commitment, unfortunately. So these two guys have kindly stepped in to fill the shoes, and we're going to be talking about anthroposophy, which
Something
it comes...
like that.
comes from the words anthropo, which mean human, and sophia, which mean wisdom. So, as Hein, this was your idea to talk about this subject. I'll let you give it a brief introduction.
Okay, let me try. Anthroposophy, I think it is pronounced, is, well, a spiritual movement, I'd say. It's quite religion-y, but it doesn't have gods or stuff like that. But they have deep ideas about spirituality and the existence of spirits. And, I mean, the core philosophy is rather vague, I should admit. But it's been around for, well, roughly the early 1900s. Rudolf Steiner, a German philosopher or something like that, introduced a lot. He started at the Theosophic Society. Madame Blavatsky, maybe you heard about her? Yeah, but they fell out, and he started his own thingy, and it became anthroposophy. Bloody word. Anyway,
let's have a subject no one could pronounce.
Yeah, that works. Anyway, I've known a few people from that, and well, they are very nice people. There's no denying that. I mean, they're very kind, they're very generous. But they're also a bit bubblehead. They'll believe pretty much anything you tell them, and they are very wooey in their beliefs. So, for instance, one thing I talked earlier a bit about is they don't like vaccination at all.
Right.
They've been anti-vaxxers for as long as I know. I mean, the people I know, I've known them for 30, 40 years, and they didn't do that. And, well, they have particular ideas about education, science, particularly healthcare, and well, there are some other bits that are strange, to say the least, and in some cases, I think, dangerous.
Yeah.
So that was the idea why I would like to talk about that from a skeptic point of view.
Yeah, as someone who's not only had COVID but been badly affected by COVID, I'm really strong against the kind of anti-vax movement. I think it's just a really bad stance to take in every aspect of it.
Yeah.
But when I was looking, because I'd never heard of this before you broached it as a subject, and I've had a quick look around it, and the health kind of aspects of this movement in general are a little bit woo. It's all very holistic and kind of nicey sounding, just on the edge of plausibility.
There are some bits that I really don't like, and not only just the anti-vax bit, but one of the people I knew of who were Anthroposophy people was the woman next door where I lived then, and she was of the opinion that thinking the right thoughts could cure you from nasty disease.
Wow.
That, by the way, is a rather common thingy in that kind of woo country.
Yeah.
At least in the Netherlands. I don't know how that's abroad. I mean,
going off topic just a little bit. What's the kind of state of religiosity as a whole in the Netherlands? Are there a lot of religious people, or is it kind of more like the UK where there's not so many religious people, but a lot of people who believe in kind of woo claims?
It's pretty much the latter. I think that something like 40% of people, when asked, will say they believe in some deity, and the rest, no specific deity or atheist or free thinker or anything else. But the idea that there is some higher power is pretty common.
Right.
I can't say exact numbers, but so I mean, I think that's something like 30 or 40% of people are more or less Christian, as in Roman Catholics or standard Protestant church. The smaller Protestant churches aren't very popular at all, and something like 5% are Muslims.
Right.
We have a considerable Muslim.
So as far as anthropos, someone else say it, please.
Blah blah. Yep.
Anthroposophy.
That's the one. Goes out. What's the kind of representation of that in the Netherlands? Because
they're small. They're small. Something like a few 10,000 of people.
Right. Because
I don't know exactly.
Have 4 centres in the UK from the things I was looking at earlier. I don't know if Ascalon got the same kind of number.
I actually knew about 2 of them anyway. There's a high school in Edinburgh actually named after Steiner, and there's a place up in Aberdeen. It's called Camp Hill. It's a special needs school, but they don't tend to go into too much of the woo there. It's actually quite highly rated. It's got quite a few awards from the Care Commission and from the National Autistic Society and things like that. So there's at least some part of this batshit stuff that's doing some good in the world.
Yeah, see, this is interesting because I have no problem with stuff like that. If you're going to open a school, if you're part of a movement, and the same goes for general religious schools, if you're teaching people and you're teaching them properly and you're sticking within the national curriculum as we have in the UK, and you're getting good results and you're not teaching them the kind of heart of the craziness that you're following, I don't really see any problem with that. And I noticed on the website, it said a lot of the people involved were teachers and things.
Yeah. I mean, Camp Hill in particular, I think the main, I don't want to use the word philosophy, but one of the main points of the Camp Hill school is that it's like every human has like a healthy inner personality, independent of physical and mental disabilities. So they try and encourage that as much as possible, which is, I think, where a lot of the accolades come from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know very much about that. I'm not an educator and I don't have children, so it's not something I ever dove into. But I mean, we have what in Dutch is called the vrije school, means free school, but they're essentially Steiner-driven schools.
Right.
There are a few. What I got from statistics in general, I mean, they're of course subject to Dutch national education inspection. They need to do things to the national curriculum. I mean, that leaves them quite a bit of room for, well, they decide themselves how they do it, but there's a core curriculum they must follow. And there's an inspectorate for that. And inspectorate says they're doing okay. A few schools, not so much, but that's in other schools that happens as well. I mean, Dutch Muslim schools score worse.
Right.
Give an example.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty much the same here because we've got a lot of Catholic schools. I think they pretty much have to stick to the national curriculum as well.
Yeah, my children go to a Catholic school.
Yeah, so does my daughter. It's primary school right now.
Yeah.
It's good. I like the head teacher, actually. She takes no crap from anybody. She comes down and bullying like a bag of hammers.
So going off topic slightly, what's I don't want to make this too much about the British education system, but how much do they push Catholicism in your daughter's school?
It's totally optional. So if she doesn't want to go, she doesn't have to do it. So it's fine. It suits me perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
It's up to her. If she wants to go and learn about it, then obviously fine. But I'm not going to force her either way.
Yeah.
So going back onto it's from the one of the British, from the National British Head website. It says it's a modern spiritual path that cherishes and respects the freedom of each individual. Right, enough. Nothing wrong with that. It recognizes, however, that real freedom is actually an inner capacity that can only be obtained by degrees according to the spiritual development of the individual. Now we start seeing a little bit more woo coming into it.
Yes.
The striving for this capacity and the corresponding spiritual development can be greatly assisted through a scientific study of the spiritual nature of humanity and the universe. What the fuck does that mean?
Well, it gets a bit crazier after that because hang on, I wrote a note about this. Yeah, Steiner reckoned that studying the spiritual world was focused on pretty much direct personal experience, and obviously as people who speak out against religion, we know how well that works out for people.
Yeah.
Although the way they try and get there is interesting, because from what I read, it's they try and practice forms of ethical and cognitive self-discipline, so like controlling your thinking, your composure, your positivity, things like that. So it all seems to be quite internalized, but there's just no evidence for any of it, really.
No. This is what I found quite disturbing about it, because it, as I said earlier, it does, on the face of it, it does seem almost credible in a lot of ways. And I think that makes it dangerous, because that can draw a lot of people into it.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I know, they're not very preachy. At least the people I've known, the neighbors. There's also a friend of my mother's who was much into this, as was her husband. Neither of them are with us anymore, but they weren't preachy in any way. They didn't want to get me into their movement. And again, they were very nice people, very kind, but a bit woo in the head.
Right.
And I'm
stealing that phrase, by the way. I'm totally stealing woo in the head.
Yeah, okay. By all means do. I remember stories of their children, those friends of my mother's. They had two daughters. and they went to one of them special schools, and they'd left the movement as soon as they could, by the way, not so much because they hated it, but because it didn't work for them. What they complained most about was that essentially every move they made was supposed to be therapeutical.
Right.
Every breath they took was supposed to be good for them, or bad for them, or if they did it wrong. I don't remember details. And I mean, that's one of the big problems with this movement, is getting specifics is very difficult.
Yeah. I think
exactly nailing down what they are talking about.
Yeah,
that rarely works.
That can be said, I think, for a lot of these. I mean, I was going to say New Agey movements, but this kind of predates the kind of whole.
By half a century.
Yeah. It comes more, I think, at the same time as the kind of spiritualism stuff was starting to emerge and things like that.
That might be correct.
There's quite a lot of spiritualism involved, and from what I've read, especially about the medicine sort and health aspect of this, like they believe that your karmic destiny can affect your health, and your past lives can influence what illnesses you get. And I see this is the problem I've always had for reincarnation, because knowing my bastard luck, I'll come back as me.
Well, I mean, I actually missed the whole. Oh, shit, me, I've just dropped that. Things are going well today. My whole thing with the, I'll just pick my light up while I'm speaking. My whole thing with the, I missed the whole reincarnation thing, but I've had quite a lot of stuff to do with kind of Buddhists, looking at Buddhism and Eastern religions and stuff, and that is one of the big criticisms I have of those is the whole karma and reincarnation thing that goes off in that. And I think you see a lot of it in that's working really well. I think you see a lot of it in the like New Age movements that came up in the 60s and the 70s, or even as early as the 50s in the West, where that's kind of jumped on as some kind of amazing factor. And I don't really see why. I don't know whether it's just because it's a romantic thing that people like to cling on to, or what.
A friend of mine described it like this: believing in reincarnation is for many people essentially wanting to get a second chance at life.
It's a fair explanation. Yeah,
I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So, Ascalon, you were talking a little bit about the medicinal stuff and things in that. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
To be honest, Hein sort of touched upon the biggest point. There's a lot of them do oppose vaccinations.
Yes.
It's a lot of their stuff is very, very similar to homeopathy. In fact, it's exactly the same. They just don't call it homeopathy.
Yeah, but it's very close to it. And I suppose we all think more or less the same about homeopathy.
Yeah.
I mean, my opinion is you can just as well take a drink. Whiskey, for instance.
That works. No, I'm sure me and Ascalon are both big fans of the old whiskey as a medicinal
so am
thing. Well, hello. So I'll just interrupt at this juncture just to say we are joined now by a very good friend of mine and another ACA volunteer, Philip Leach, who's got half a head, and I'm not sure if he's got any audio at the minute.
I was going to say it's at least his forehead.
It's I think we've got a full house now, so welcome, Philip. If you can hear us, jump in whenever you want to and whenever you can, and we'll continue talking until you get here.
There was quite a batshit theory I discovered of Steiner's. He didn't believe that the heart actually pumped blood around the body. He thought it just did it of its own free will.
Right, that's
I don't know what my train of thought was when I wrote this down, but I've got in brackets here. Whee!
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm not sure how, especially with the kind of scientific thing that it was pushing, how you'd kind of assess that?
I've no idea, because I mean, one of his people that helped found this movement, basically the pediatrician that set up the special school in Aberdeen was a pediatrician, so surely he should fucking know better.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's some cognitive dissonance within the movement regarding things like that, then, where they separate the kind of the knowledge of what they do know to what they believe?
Oh, it's hard to say. I mean, it probably goes back to what Hein said earlier. It's really hard to pinpoint anything specific in the philosophy of the movement. So you can pretty much make it up as you go along, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you who have had friends and things within the movement, then what have you found much disparity between what they believe between themselves on that point?
A couple of times, actually. Yeah, there's a friend of mine, his dad was very, very into Reiki, when I was younger, and he had friends who was into it as well, and one of them suddenly appeared at the meeting one day and says, "Oh, guys, I've discovered this new type of energy. You've got to try it." And they're doing exactly the same movements and positions and things like that, and suddenly they all managed to feel this new energy.
Right.
How the bloody hell can that be possible?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. One of the things that I well remember is that these people, these friends, picked up pretty much any bit of woo they came across.
Right.
Without any critical assessment, no thinking, is this right? Do we? I mean, evidence is not required. And this is just my experience, of course. I'm not claiming that all people who follow this idea are the same. Shouldn't do that. I mean, but I don't think that critical thinking is a widely spread quality.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, hello, Philip.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah. I was so glad to have you. Just a quick note to our followers. I have been trying to get Philip to go on various shows for probably nigh on a year. And I'm so proud that this is the first one he's actually took the jump in, and it's to help me out as well. And I'm so glad to have him here. His mind is brilliant. He's kind of my go-to person for checking my own philosophy in a lot of places. So after that massive introduction, Philip, have you had a chance to kind of have a look at the subject we're talking about? And
yeah, I have. So I actually knew a little bit about it beforehand because it's been somewhat controversial in my country, Australia. So the architect of Canberra, our capital city for Australia, you've actually got me and my cat at the moment. She always does this during meetings, but anyway, she's decided to join us. This is Mischief.
Hey, it's a ratings booster having a cat on.
True.
Yeah, so this Walter Burley Griffin came to Australia and actually discovered Steinerism. And when he actually designed the layout for Canberra, he actually based it on Steineristic this union of spirituality and humanism. So he actually designed our entire capital based on Steiner beliefs, and so it's one of these little components comes off the side here as architecture in Steinerism. Mm-hmm. So not many people in Australia realize that we've got this quite woo reasoning, but behind the design of our capital. We look at it and go, oh, yes, it's very geometric, and that makes a lot of sense. They don't realize actually it's got an inherently spiritual nature to the design. And the main lake of our capital is actually Lake Burley Griffin, so named after the designer, which is quite nice. But this symmetry and the way that it includes large water features and so on was all spiritual reasons. And it won awards. It was quite it's quite well received, but fundamentally it's baseless. And I think that's the same with the medicine. It's the same with there's even like biodynamic agriculture.
Yeah.
as you say, that they label scientific, and they're doing research. They're actually applying scientific method, but it just seems bizarre that they don't actually take the first step of determining if there is a soul, determining if there is spirituality. And where it becomes controversial in Australia is we have Steiner schools, and we don't have the same sort of issues as America, but we're not meant to have prayers in school. So they don't have prayers anyway. They have, I think, a contemplative silence where they're introspectively thinking. And that's been somewhat controversial, but has been allowed. So that's my brief understanding of Steinerism in Australia. But yeah, I don't know people personally who study it.
That's really interesting because both Hein and Ascalon said that they were familiar with the schools from the movement as well. And they said they were really good performing schools. Is that what you found in Australia? Is that woo aside?
I don't know about academically popular, but they're quite popular in that they're growing.
Right.
So all private schools in Australia have been growing, and they've sort of seen as a non-religious variant to send children to, where it tends to be people who are a little bit wealthier who go to the religious schools. So they want an option that's not religious. They'll go to Steiner thinking that it is non-religious. But I don't know academically whether they're more popular or not.
Right, that's interesting. I was looking at the website, and bear in mind when I was doing, because we've only had a short time to have a look at stuff for this, and we don't normally research episodes at all, but I literally knew nothing about the movement before we started, so I thought I had to have a little look. I've only been on the kind of British website, so I've not really done anything much further than that. But there's all sorts of different things. And it was interesting that Philip was talking about architecture, because they go as far as to kind of encourage, what was the word they used? I can't remember, like artistic dance and things as kind of
Eurythmy. Eurythmy. That's I don't know exactly what it entails. I've never been there. Maybe you remember the band the Eurythmics. They were named after that.
Right.
It's expression in movement that is supposed to do all kind of good, and it's practiced quite a bit in Steiner schools.
Right.
Wow.
And as far as I'm told by children who were there, it's bollocks.
That's certainly one way of putting it.
Yeah.
Well, you haven't proved it's bollocks.
No, they told me. No, I don't know. I mean, I think it may be okay, but I think there is some. There's no foundation in evidence for what they're doing. And so it may be okay in the best. I mean, I don't think that movement stuff is bad. I mean, at least the exercise bit is good. But if moving in the right way makes you more healthy or better in any way, that needs to be I need evidence for that.
Yeah, this is the thing with the website, when on the British website, because I kind of had a quick look at that, and then I had a quick look at that sort of font of all knowledge, Wikipedia, to just get some background information as well. And the website was very much pushing the angle of the kind of the therapy through the movement and the organic stuff through the farming and the architecture and all the positive things. What it didn't touch on so much were although it mentioned the spirituality, as I previously mentioned, it didn't really go deeply into it. And I'm wondering if that's an intentional kind of thing on the part of the organization, not to kind of push all this holistic almost scientific, therapeutic stuff to the fore and leave the kind of underlying theology, if you like, behind until people get further into it. What are your guys' opinions on that?
You would have to go quite deep into it. I mean, one part that I read was the whole point of all this was to try and explore the spirit realm and basically to prove that this was entirely possible. But as I said before, only through personal experience, which is obviously usually complete bullshit. But actually, there's something that'll back this up here. These two initial points made me very nervous when I started reading about this. Firstly, the translation, which, as Richard already said, was a translation from Greek, which means human wisdom, which I think humans have proved many times over the years we're not very good at. And it was first published in a book by an unknown author. That's not knowing the source and just taking it on faith, really, I suppose would be the best way to describe it. It's sort of set me on edge as soon as I started researching this.
Yeah, I mean, my impression is from, again, the people I've talked with, and that's, I mean, I did try to read some bits of literature on Steiner and what Steiner wrote and stuff like that, and it's incredibly boring. So I gave up on that. But I talked about that, and my impression is that essentially the followers don't know either, and so they're not pushing it because they don't know what to push.
Yeah. So they keep on using this word holistic.
Yes.
They use it in their education. They use it in the agriculture and the medicine, holistic. So when I start to see that in some of the spiritual wording, to me, it sort of comes down on a catch-all for everyone who's got a religious belief who can buy into this. So it's not excluding any religion. It's not excluding. So to me, it's. I really wonder about what the actual personal identity of the people within it are. I would suspect that they're actually of very specific religious variants. And this is just almost an arm of Christianity and of Christian beliefs, or whether it's its standalone thing. So, for instance, in the schools,
it's a standalone thing in as far as the kind of the deeper dimensions of it go. Although they do mention Jesus as a kind of thing, but it's in a really non-Christian way. It's not even, I mean, I'd go as far as to say it's even like further out than kind of Mormonism or Christadelphianism, which are really the kind of limits of the recognized Christianity. It touches upon Christianity in name only, I think.
There is an element of it in there. I mean, from what I was reading, they tried to claim that you can find a balance of good between these two characters named Lucifer and Ahriman.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you're familiar with it, Richard. Reminds me of you remember the cartoon Rasta Mouse that was on the TV here?
I do remember Rasta Mouse. I was a big fan of it.
Couldn't get that out of my head when I read Ahriman, because that's what I imagined them saying. Ahriman.
Yeah. I think Ahriman is. From what the blurb is, it's a dark kind of spirit energy that tempts human beings to deny the link with divinity.
I may be wrong, but I seem to remember this from Zoroastrian stuff. Nothing. I know nothing about that religion, by the way. So don't question me on that.
No, I'm not familiar with it myself either, but I mean, a lot of the goofy names, they all tend to blend together when you're not researching them constantly.
Yeah. So, Philly, you had a point on that.
Yeah. So the controversial thing in Australia is because we've got 50 schools in Australia, which is quite a lot of schools to have. Yeah. So they have a blessing every morning, and that's. There was controversy as to whether that was a prayer or not. and
Right.
they considered it not a prayer because it wasn't to a specific deity. But the wording of it was very much of almost like a Christian blessing. The wording of it, it sounded exactly like it was a Christian blessing. So that's where I was left thinking that the people who were saying that blessing would be Christian, but that's with my background being Christian, that may just be projection.
Yeah, certainly the Christ or I don't know if it's the exact Christ, but the way they refer to Christ in the brief look I had was of kind of a representative of humanity, which is called Christ. And it's a spiritual entity who stands between and harmonizes these two extremes that we've just previously talked about, the Ahriman and Lucifer extremes. So it is kind of, it draws on Christianity, I think. But as to whether it's a little bit, as I think everyone's mentioned, it's a little bit vague in a lot of areas.
Yes.
Yeah.
A bit.
I noticed that they have social goals seem to be one of the most specific things. I got them listed out here as liberty in cultural life, equality of rights, the sphere of legislation, which is always a red flag for me.
Yeah, that's
fraternity in the economic sphere, which
I think we lost you just a little bit after the red flag comment.
Okay, so the liberty of the three social goals: liberty in cultural life, equality of rights, the sphere of legislation, and then finally the fraternity in the economic sphere, which to me, that last one's not so much of a red flag. That's just what people of a religion will do, is create a fraternity. But they do mean more like the fraternity of man so again, this holistic thing. But the equality of rights, the sphere of legislation, clearly they're trying to affect legislation, so that they do have specific things that they are doing. It's not all generic. They have they have bodies. Each country that I could see had an association. Each major state in America has an association. So they're an organized body of people who have quite a structured body. And although it appears that the beliefs are quite broad and unspecific, they as an organization seem quite organized and quite active.
Yeah, I mean, you would think if they're setting schools up and things, they've got some kind of like clout behind them.
And so when we talked about medicine, they've got a medical research institute. Agriculture, they've got an agricultural research institute. They get funding. They publish research. It's coordinated.
Yeah, quite a big portion of a university in Germany, in Witten. They actually have quite a big presence in. Well, let me figure this out. Anthroposophical medicine. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there was quite a bit to do about that. Something like 10 or 20 years ago. I can't remember exactly, but if memory served, in Germany there was quite a bit of. They tried to get, I think, something like a real professorship in anthroposophical something, and that didn't go well. The newspapers picked on that. As in they're doing woo instead of science at a university. Can't have that.
That's good. That actually reminds me of what happened in Texas with the Texas School Board and the creationists trying to push to get in creationism taught in school. It sounds like a very similar situation to that.
Yeah. And details are a bit vague to me. It's a long time ago, and even then, I didn't read all the details. But anyway, I mean, pretty much the press who got into it, and that cost the university that did that quite a bit of government support and private support. And I seem to remember that eventually a large software company put lots of money in it to, well, more or less save the university. How it exactly ended, I can't remember.
They tried the same thing with the university in Aberdeen as well, if I remember right. Is it Software AG, I think it was called, the company? But it didn't go anywhere. It would have damaged the university's reputation beyond repair. It's just so uncredited.
Yeah.
Where did I see that? Here. Well, yeah, £1.5 million they tried to set into it. Says here that any decent university should even consider an anthroposophical medicine unit. Seems incomprehensible.
Yeah, rightly so.
Well, I mean, the NHS is guilty of that. Have you seen the size of the homeopathic hospital they've got in London?
You're kidding.
Huge. No.
Yeah. NHS funded.
Yeah, state funded.
I have a friend who's an acupuncturist. He's a very good friend of mine, and he's always producing things from the NHS that like about how acupuncture is prescribed on the NHS. And we've talked about this. Me, Laura, and Richard have talked about this previously on the show. But it's always astounded me because the kind of principles behind acupuncture are all to do with chi and the chi flow through the body. And I'd love to know what kind of scientific research goes into. I just
None
don't
that
know.
I know of. None that I know of.
As I understand it, there's the pseudoscience of it is that if you map it out, the acupuncture points map nerves, and that they're actually hitting nerves with the acupuncture points. And I don't understand necessarily what in hitting a needle into a nerve, what benefit that has to the body, but that's the pseudoscience, is that that it is actually doing something. It's not just chi.
Yeah. Right. Okay. It's not
you
just
could achieve the same
redirecting.
results with like Botox or something, like Anne Robinson. Just every time she winks, her leg kicks.
So I want to come back to this. Did you say it was Canberra, Philip?
Canberra, so our capital. So a lot of people think Sydney is the capital of Australia. It's actually Canberra. That's our government centre.
Yeah. So is that because when you were talking, I had this kind of mental image, rightly or wrongly, of I was thinking of Utah and how the Mormons have kind of controlled Utah, and now it's so it's not like that.
No. So it's basically they put a competition out because when they federated Australia, there was a lot of time and energy put into it, where it was going to be located and how it was going to be designed. So they actually put it out as a competition as to what the layout of the city was going to be, what the Parliament House and everything would look like. So this guy won an award. He actually came over from Chicago, I think, for it. But he actually won the award based on his sketches and everything to design it out. So it's just the architect used Steiner principles. It's not as there was actually already he became Steiner in Australia. So there was already a Steiner community, and I keep on using the word Stein because that's what it's known as in Australia, Steinerism. This
it's easier to pronounce. I don't blame you.
Anthroposophy. No, they just call it Steinerism, and the schools are Steiner schools. They use another term as well, but anyway, that's generally the term I'm familiar with. So yeah, he designed the layout based on Steiner principles. So it's not that there was, it wasn't like Mormon where it was designed to be the land. And I think that's actually one of the things with Steinerism is that they're not as gung-ho with converting people. They're not as gung-ho with establishing an area that is theirs. They're very much in the community. And this is why I was saying, I don't know whether they have overlapping beliefs because they seem to be diffuse. So Canberra has Steiner schools. I think at least one Steiner school, but it hasn't got a long history. It's only about 20 or 30 years. I don't think they would have had Steiner schools, much back before that in Canberra. So it's not an endemic as such belief system in Canberra.
Right. So that was the point I wasn't sure about.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of trivia that what capital in the world is based? The design is based on a religious belief or a spiritual belief, and I think it'd probably be one of the only ones.
First one I've ever heard of.
Yeah, and like I said, most Australians aren't even aware of that. But when you actually dig into it, this Walter Burley Griffin has actually written extensively on this, so it's not a minor part of it. It was fundamental. And although he never met Steiner in his life, because he came to Steinerism after Steiner passed, he wrote extensively on Steiner, the person and the beliefs.
Seemed quite an interesting guy, to be honest, Steiner. I mean, I remember reading he was quite popular in Germany, sort of shortly after the First World War, for doing lecture series and speaking out against nationalism. Obviously, that didn't take on, but...
Well, he spoke out against Nazis as well, apparently.
Yeah, quite a bit, actually. I mean, it goes back to what you were saying. I don't think they were trying to convert anybody or bulldoze over anybody else's belief. They were just happy enough to do their own thing. The art style as well, from as you say, Steinerism was quite interesting. It's a weird way of doing it. I forget what the name of the special paint is, but you paint the blank spaces first, and then you paint over the top of it, and sort of you bring the image out rather than paint the image on. I'm probably describing it really badly, but I'm going to look into that a bit more because it looks quite interesting.
Yeah, about architecture, I know that several architects in the Netherlands have been inspired by Steinerism or are adherents of that and work that into their work. And some of the buildings I quite like. They're quite organically shaped buildings, and I mean, it's at least not the little blocks most of our cities are made of.
Yeah,
so
I had when I was looking on the British group's website, they had a couple of examples of the architecture, and they had like little rural houses and things, and they look nice enough.
Yeah,
you couldn't fault the architecture.
Nope. I mean, I don't know Canberra, but
I think this.
Go on, Phil.
I was just going to say that if you're basing architecture off spirituality, well, what role is spirituality actually having in the design? So I think it's just people who are well educated who are designing things and labeling it rather than.
Yeah. I think you're right there. I mean, I can't imagine that believing in spirits makes you design differently.
I just have.
I don't know about
that.
Because if you have a look at mosques and churches and things, I mean, churches are designed, especially the traditional kind of church and cathedral in Britain is they're designed specifically to be a certain shape, to have certain areas, to have. So I think when you're talking about religious buildings, that's definitely the case. But
for,
I mean,
for an office, or a home, it doesn't make much. At least it doesn't make much sense to me.
The one bit where I think it does is where you have the Moorish designs, the distinctly Arabic designs, like in Hyderabad. That's pervasive. Those designs are pervasive throughout everything from windows, tiles. It impacts the design, but it's more a reflection of the mosaics from mosques. So there, you can definitely get that sense of Islamic culture imprinting on the architecture around you. But besides that, whenever I hear the buildings based on spiritual beliefs, I have visions of Ghostbusters.
I was just thinking the same thing.
That's a rabbit hole we don't want to go down.
No, let's not.
So, what was I going to say? I was thinking about when you were talking about Steiner. Someone mentioned it was Germany, but I've got in my notes that it was Austria.
Oh, he was Austrian, yeah. But he was quite popular in Germany after the war because of the way he was speaking out against all the nonsense that was going on. I think
Was
he
it after the
did
war?
quite a lot
Because
of lectures.
the
Yeah, after
dates
the war,
I've
yeah.
got for him are 1925 when he died.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was actually speaking out about against the Nazi movement back then.
Right.
But yeah,
at the start of it, as opposed to
primarily, like from what I was reading, primarily around the nationalism, the ultra nationalism, because he was against nationalism from the start. I'm not sure how strong the Nazis were on the racism then, but he was also very anti-racist, but almost like this this holistic humans are all one thing was quite strong, and it's I don't know how much a reflection of his belief system is actually due to a revolt against what the sentiment in Germany and Europe as a whole at that point in time. That's sort of the impression I always have had, that it was seeing the popular movement that was happening and revolting against it.
It makes sense. You can imagine living back then. I mean, Europe had been kicking the shit out of each other for the best part of 500 years, and I can sort of see why I'd had enough of it, especially considering what was happening in Germany at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed to be quite forward-thinking from a kind of a humanist, if you like, level.
Yeah.
I would say so. That's like what Philip says. I think that's kind of what he meant when he was talking about the global fraternity and things like that. It's just try and do things sort of as a whole rather than independently. I could be wrong. That's just the impression I got from it.
Have any of you read anything about, because the brief notes I saw said it was also claimed to be a clairvoyant. Have any of you read up on that side of it? Come on, it's a skeptic show. We've got
no.
Again, proof that he wasn't.
I'm just wondering, because someone, I don't know which one of you it was, mentioned it was friends with Madame Blavatsky, who was obviously kind of really big into the clairvoyance and things, and that he had a falling out with her. I wonder if I just wondered if any of you knew anything about that, or
no,
the kind of circumstances
just something
around.
No, just something I picked up. I know very little about that. I mean, Madame Blavatsky is, well, that's a rabbit hole quite of its own.
Yeah, we could do a show on that. All on its own.
Yes. But anyway, I mean, Madame Blavatsky went more the Eastern philosophy way with Krishnamurti, and God, what a mess was that. I mean, not Krishnamurti. He wasn't so bad, but Madame Blavatsky was.
Yeah.
So that Rudolf Steiner had a fallout with her seems rather obvious. I mean, he came from a Christian background and wasn't so fond of Eastern philosophy,
right?
As I understand it, or at least he was more or less offended by the anti-Christian side of Madame Blavatsky. Sorry.
Right. But it did adopt ideas such as reincarnation and
yes,
things like that.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't all against that, but I mean, as I understand it, Madame Blavatsky presented Krishnamurti as a sort of second coming or third coming of Christ. Don't ask me about the details.
Which do you know which Krishnamurti? Because there were two, wasn't there? There was Jiddu.
Oh,
I think one, and I'm not sure which one was which.
I know only of one. Hang on a sec.
I think there were two Krishnamurtis who were leaders, but I remember I saw a video actually of one of them who had it was in dialogue with Buddhists and scientists. I once said physicists. And they all had a kind of big dialogue together. And that means it's about 25 years ago since I've seen that video, but it was quite a long time ago. But this was around late 60s, early 70s. So I'm guessing the other Krishnamurti, if he was around at the same time of Blavatsky, was somewhat earlier than that.
Yeah. I mean, apparently it's quite a common name in India.
Yeah.
So I got a bit lost here. I mean, I only know it from the spiritual bits, and he was, as I understand it, quite popular in the first half of the 1900s.
Right.
Details I don't remember, but I mean, in certain circles in the Netherlands, his name is still highly revered.
So we talked about kind of religion and spirituality on the whole in the Netherlands earlier, but
yeah,
what's it like in Australia, Philip? Do you have a strong kind of traditional religious tradition, or is it more towards the spiritual end as it is in the Netherlands and the UK?
Quite strongly Christian. So a lot of people still consider it a Christian nation. We've just done or are doing a census today, actually, for Australia to work out what the religious breakup is, but vastly majority Christian. We had both the Irish Catholics, so that we've got a lot of Irish Catholicism, Catholic schools throughout Australia. So some of what's been happening in Canada, there's stories coming out of the similar things happening in Australia with our Catholic system, with the dispatching of babies. There's then the Anglican Church is probably one of the largest churches, Church of England. Obviously, Australia still comes under the Queen. So I was raised through Anglican schools, but there's a long history of Methodist and like the Uniting Church is very big in Australia. So there's quite a diversity, but it's primarily Christian. We've had Islam in Australia for essentially the entire length of Australia. Our main transport routes for outback communities were Islamic cattle trains, so that there's been diversity, but primarily Christian. And I'd say until recently, it's been maybe 70 to 60% Christian. That's we have cathedrals. We've got like Adelaide is called the City of Churches. We've got a lot of churches. Every city you go to, there's churches everywhere. And obviously, we're the home of Hillsong.
Wow, that's funny because I thought I don't know when it was. It was a couple of years. I don't want to say too long ago, but man, I'm a bit vague on it. It was before the kind of big first Californian wildfires of about 4 years ago. There was a swathe of wildfires to Australia, and I remember I was watching the BBC News one morning, and they were interviewing kind of live interviews with people who'd been affected by the wildfires, and there was an interview with the guy who literally just started preaching. Saying it's punishment from God and things alive on there, and they were like, they did best to shoo him off. But that was kind of the first hint I had that Australia was really like religious.
We've had a couple of really controversial people in Australia. So one of them was a rugby player who kept on coming out with incredibly homophobic statements, like quoting the Bible. So obviously it's going to be incredibly homophobic, but he kept losing his contracts, and then he kept on suing because his religious belief shouldn't affect his contracts. And it's been through the news quite a lot. So that the fundamental Christianity is still big in Australia, and you do have people with these incredibly literal beliefs. We have whole communities of what most people would call a cult. So they're, the Children of Christ. We've got, our government still gives them tax deductions and allows them to get away with what any reasonable person would see as a cult. So it's I'm not surprised that someone would be preaching.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up in a minute. We've been going around about an hour. So what are your final thoughts, gents, on... I'll have one more attempt at saying it. No, I'm not. I'm just going to say Steinerism because it's easier. What What are your final thoughts on Steinerism? And considering we've this is a last minute thrown together episode, I appreciate you've not had much time to research it or anything, but let's start with Ascalon.
I have some interesting ideas. I'm just not entirely convinced by the way they plan on getting there. Like, I've got absolutely zero interest in them trying to figure out how to explore the spirit realm or anything, but like the art style, the organic farming, the speaking out against nationalism, things like that, those are things I can get on board with. I'm just, again, not convinced by the methods.
Hey, Philip.
Sorry, to look a bit more into it. No, you're okay. Carry on.
Phil.
Yeah. So my thoughts on it are that, again, it seems to have come out as a revolt against an anti-humanist scenario that was happening in Europe. I think fundamentally it's begging the question. It's trying to combine science and spirituality without having demonstrated that there is a spirituality. So that's my take on it.
Okay, Hein?
Yeah. I think I'm a bit been too harsh in this. I mean, I sort of admire the, what do you call it? Idealism, that's the word.
Right.
I think their practice is confused, and they don't know, they have no clear idea what they're doing and why they're doing it. But I mean, where they come from, I have quite a bit of sympathy for that.
Yeah. I think I agree with you all to an extent. I think the biggest thing for me with any kind of movement like this is how dangerous is it where you've kind of got all these kind of nice sounding, innocent sounding, almost in some cases positive sounding kind of ideas and ideologies, but it's all wrapped up in this kind of spiritual vagueness and weird kind of philosophy behind it. That's where it begins to get a little bit dangerous. Yeah. I'm always unsure about things when they come from that aspect. Listen, gents, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you've all joined me at the very last minute. Philip, I'm so glad to get you on TV at last, because I've been trying for so long, and I'm going to now you've broke the seal. You've got to do it more often. Yeah. There's no way out of it now. But Ascalon, Hein, it's been brilliant having you both on. I'd love to do something with all three of you again in the future. We're obviously not going to go through the usual skeptic hangout spiel at the end, because I can't remember what I'm supposed to say. So you three have got no chance. So all we'll do is we'll sign off, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Right, and we'll cut that there for the show. And seriously, thanks, guys, for joining me, because you've really got me out of some shit.
Yeah, no worries. It was good fun. No worries. It was actually quite interesting looking up this stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry for the mix-up with the time. I for some reason, I had it in my calendar as 6:30, so I'll get the time right.
Don't worry about it. I do it all the time. I do it all. And I set alarms to get up. I don't know, you probably did as well, but I set alarms for like 2:30, 1:30 to get up in the morning. And I find I've got like 2 hours to wait. So it's not much fun. But anyway, thanks a lot, guys, for joining me. I'll speak to you all again soon.
Anytime, man. See you later.
Bye.
Yeah.